Eileen Wuornos. I feel like I say her name weird. I've been practicing. Eileen Wuornos was born in Rochester, Michigan on February 29th, 1956. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, was 14 years old when she married 16-year-old Leo Dale Pittman. Now, between the two of them, they actually had a son first, and he was born in March of 1955. Eileen's mother, she became pregnant again, this time with Eileen. Eileen, she actually never got the opportunity that we know of to meet her father, because at the time of her birth and throughout most of her life or her childhood, he was in prison. He was arrested and convicted of the rape and attempted murder of a 7-year-old girl. I know. Then, in January of 1969, he committed suicide by hanging himself in prison. So in January of 1960, Eileen was almost 4 years old at the time. Well, guess what? Her mom takes Eileen and her brother to their grandparents' house, okay? She takes them there, she drops them off, and she never comes back. By the age of 11, Eileen began engaging in sexual activities in exchange for and food, and she would do this even at school, so with other kids or outside of school as well. Now, sadly for Eileen and her brother, their home life with their grandparents was awful, just garbage. Eileen would say that her and her brother, they would engage in sexual relations at home together. I know. But most of all, Eileen would say that her grandfather was an alcoholic, and he would her and beat her throughout her childhood. He would also rape her, and it gets worse. He would allow friends of the family to come by the home, come on by, and they would participate in the abuse. Sadly, at the age of 14, Eileen, she becomes pregnant. Ugh, I know. Sad. Awful. God. Now, she becomes pregnant by one of her grandparents' friends. Eileen was placed in a home for unwed mothers, and while there, that's when she would have the baby, and then the baby would be put up for adoption. And this happened in March of 1971. Shortly after giving birth to her baby, Eileen, she goes back to living with her grandparents. It was not long after. That's when her grandmother had died of liver failure. At the age of 15, that's when her grandpa would kick Eileen and her brother out of the home. So at this point, Eileen and her brother, they have nowhere to go. They're 15. Her brother went in a different direction, and Eileen ended up going to a wooded area that was nearby, and then she worked as a worker at night to support herself. She's 15. Anywho, so we're gonna fast forward now to May of 1974. Eileen was 18 years old, and she was arrested in Colorado. She was arrested because she was driving under the influence, but also for firing a pistol from a moving vehicle and disorderly conduct. She was later charged with failure to appear for, you guessed it, failing to appear in court. And she was just kind of racking up her record. In 1976, Eileen, she would end up hitchhiking from Colorado to Florida. And when Eileen was in Florida, that's when she met 69-year-old Lewis, who was a yacht club president. He's a little bit older than her, a lot older than her, and he seemed to have money. And the two of them ended up getting married pretty quickly after meeting. Eileen, though, she was still involving herself into a lot of confrontations at local bars, which would eventually lead to her being arrested and sitting in jail for assault because she liked to fight. So she also assaulted her then husband. She attacked him with his own cane. Now, this would lead to him actually filing a restraining order against her. And this was like weeks after their marriage. She headed back to Michigan, and in July of 1976, that's where she was charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. And then July of 1976, Eileen's brother, her older brother, he died of cancer. Now, he ended up leaving her $10,000 from his insurance money, so she was stoked. Now, Eileen would say that she used this $10,000 to pay off a fine that she had just gotten, and then she also got a car, but she blew all $10,000 within 2 months, and the car that she had purchased, she ended up wrecking it. That didn't last long. May of 1981, Eileen, she headed back to Florida, and when she was there, she actually decided to rob a convenience store. When she was there, she actually got $35 and 2 packs of It's a win, if you ask me. She gets caught, she's arrested, and she ends up doing a year in prison. January of 1986. Eileen, she ends up meeting a woman named Tyra Moore, and she meets her at a gay bar in Daytona Beach. Eileen said that Tyra Moore, this young woman that she met, her and Eileen just had this instant connection, and easily Tyra became the love of her life, which is romantic in a way. It's romantic, come on. So the two, they move in together. The relationship moves pretty quickly. Ty was working as a maid for a hotel. Eileen, she would support them financially with her earnings from her work. So trouble came a-knockin', and accusations of assault were placed against Eileen. This was at, again, a bar. And Ty actually came forward and acted as a witness in her defense. Now, this would happen often. At first, Eileen, all of her crimes were everything but murder, right? She would rob small stores, she would rob people, she would beat people up, forge checks, anything just to kind of get her by. But, of course, that didn't last forever because Eileen then upgraded. And in 1989, that's when Eileen would go on to murder 7 men. And she did this within a 12-month period. The first victim that was found was a 51-year-old male. They saw that this victim had been shot several times, and there were 2 bullets that were found in his left lung, and those were what caused his death. But this victim was a convicted rapist who Eileen claimed to have killed in self-defense. She would go on to say that she was doing her work. He would be a client of hers, and when they were alone together, that's when he tried to strangle her and rape her. So she went on to then kill him. On June 1st, 1990, the body of a 47-year-old man was found along Route 19 in Citrus County, Florida. Now, this victim, he was shot 6 times. Then they find another victim, 40-year-old man. Eileen, she ended up shooting him 9 times. He was found in Pasco County, Florida. And this victim was a little different. He was wrapped in an electric blanket, and his body was just badly decomposing. So witnesses ended up coming forward, and they said that they saw Eileen in possession of this man's car. So that's when this Eileen lady was now on the radar, okay? So Eileen's next victim was a 65-year-old merchant seaman. He devoted much of his time to Christian outreach ministry. Sadly, his body was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Eileen, after attacking and killing this victim, she took his car. There were witnesses who saw Eileen and Ty abandoning the car later on. And when police went and got the vehicle, they were able to get a palm print on the door, the interior door handle, which linked Eileen to the car. Sadly, though, that last victim, his body was never found. Another victim, he was 50 years old and worked as a sausage salesman, was reported missing in July of 1990, and his body would be found in August in a wooded area along State Road 19. Then another one of Eileen's victims was a retired U.S. Air Force major. He was a former child abuse investigator and a former chief of police. Been shot 6 times in the head and the torso. Eileen's last victim was a 62-year-old trucker, and his naked body was found near remote lodging road in Dixie County. He had been shot 4 times. Eileen and Ty, they're driving around in one of the previous victims'